Today we're going to be taking a look at Mosaic, a new theme builder for WordPress. Now you might be thinking, do we really need another builder for WordPress, Paul? The answer is, it kind of depends on who you are and how you like to work. They're just as popular as ever, so I don't think they're going away anytime soon. But what does Mosaic bring to the table that maybe we don't have in other builders, or why should you even consider it? Well, first of all, let me just quickly say, I'm not affiliated with this in any way, shape, or form. There's no affiliate links down below whatsoever. I did get early access to this, and I do have access to the Pro or Premium version that has just been released. And you can grab access to this as well for yourself for the next 12 months for zero cost whatsoever. As you can see, if we take a look at the pricing section, we've got Personal, which is for one site, which is free for the first year. Creator, which is for 10 sites, which again is free for the first year. Or if you want to grab the early bird lifetime deal, you can pay $199 and you get access to this for unlimited sites lifetime deal. Entirely up to you if you want to grab this while it's on offer, but I would still say it's worth checking out and trying this out for yourself if you're interested. There's no obligation, no cost to you whatsoever. Okay, so what's included in Mosaic? Well, first of all, let me quickly say, this is not like Elementor. This is more like Divi or Bricks, where it's a theme and the builder in one. Some people like it, some people don't. For me personally, I prefer it because it's one less failure point to have to deal with. I don't have to install additional themes. Everything is included in the same starting set. Let's take a look at what features we have. On the website, if we scroll on down, you can see this is basically a theme builder, a visual editor, and a style guide in one. So basically, you've got your theme setup, you've got your visual builder, think Bricks, Elementor, Divi, those kinds of things. You've also got styling options. So if you want to work with classes and variables, which you should do, you can do that here as well. So you've got all the tools you should need to be able to create very creative WordPress websites and also easy to update by using that class first design system. There's also very good support inside here for dynamic content, which is something we'll take a look at quickly in this video. So if we move on down, you can see there's more options available here. You can see we've got design, so we've got full CSS control, we've got a design library, and there are comprehensive wireframes and design sets. You've got animation controls inside here. You've got advanced elements. You've got components, so you can work with components if you want to. There's a lot of options here that are really quite advanced for what is effectively a version 1 of the builder. There's the development options, so you can see all about the classes and so on. But before we sort of sit here and do this, let's go and jump into the editor itself and take a quick look. So I've installed Mosaic, and I'm going to take you through the same process that you'd have if you were trying this yourself. There's a very nice onboarding setup here, and I want to demonstrate that. So let's go and activate Mosaic Pro. It'll then kick off the wizard. So I'm going to uncheck this, and we're going to say, let's get started. You can see now we've got a couple of starter theme sets we can work with: Monolith, Gibraltar, Blank, and Empty. Now, Empty is a completely blank slate, which is probably what you want to do once you're familiar with using this. However, you can use Monolith or Gibraltar if you want a kind of fully sort of fleshed out starting point, or in this instance, we're going to go with Blank, which is basically wireframes. You can preview this by clicking the eye icon, and it'll give you more information about it, what's included, the page kit, pages, blocks, parts, and so on. Let's say we're going to go with that. We'll click on Blank. Now we can choose a blank page kit. So this is basically some predefined layouts, but they're still wireframes. So choose what you want. You can see we've got a couple of different designs here to pick and choose from. I kind of like the look of this page kit 1, so we'll choose that. We're going to activate our license. We'll click Activate. That will take us over. We just have to log in. That will take you over to the Activate option. We'll say Activate this site. Job done. Simple as that. Then you can choose whether this is a live or a test site. In this example, it's a test site. So we'll say, yep. So let's start the wizard. That's going to go and download a few bits and pieces. It takes a few seconds. There we go. Now that's pulled that in for us. Now our next step, we can see the home page here, so we can see what it looks like. As you can see, it is just basically just a typical wireframe. But now what we can do is we can choose between the design and the structure. If we come to the structure, you can see this will show us all the different pages that make up our site. If you want to add things in, or if you want to change things, you can do it here. So let's say we want to replace this header. We'll say replace header. We'll choose from one of the pre-designed ones. So for example, let's find one like this where we've got the links in the middle. We'll choose that from the options. That now updates. Same thing goes for the footer. If we want to replace the footer, let's say we want something a little bit more feature packed, we'll choose this one. There we go. That's added that in for us. If we open up any of these pages, you can see there's our home page. If you want to replace this, you can choose from any of the sort of starter site wireframes. So we'll choose homepage 2 for this example. There you go. You can see that's updated that. You can see if you come back into the design side of things, we can set up the homepage display as a static page. You can see we can choose what we want from there. We'll say homepage, we can choose our page. We don't have one just yet, so we'll leave that as it is. And the same thing goes for your posts. So let's say finish the wizard. We're happy with everything here. That's now going to pull everything in, build everything out for us, and we'll hit the ground running with templates, master templates, and some page designs all set up for us. There we go. That took about 30 seconds, and we now have everything set up. So now on the left-hand side, you can see you've got our new Mosaic section. Now, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of various different parts of this. We're not going to dig in too deep. I just want to demonstrate some of the options. But if enough people are interested, I will take a look at creating more in-depth videos on Mosaic. Let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, so let's start off. Jump into masters first of all. Now, masters is basically your master template. So in this example, if we open this up by double clicking, so this is basically your top and bottom section, your header and your footer, and then you've got your template area, which is kind of like your content area. As you can see down the left-hand side, all the things you used to see in your body, section, containers, and so on are listed here. And if you select anything inside here, you'll see we get the options now down the right-hand side. So we'll come back onto the actual interface in a moment. So that's your kind of master file. Let's come back out of this. You can see inside here, we can come into our templates, masters, components, and Gutenberg styles. We've also got themes, settings, and so on underneath. So let's come into our templates next. So this is our template library. So this is where we're going to see all the key templates, your home pages, your blog archive, your single post templates, and so on. And if you're working with dynamic data, you can create custom templates for that as well. As you can see, we can categorize and choose to filter them down by single page, single post, and so on. That will kind of fill out as you add more templates in. You want to create a new template, you simply hit the new template button. And if you want to generate thumbnails, if you made changes and so on, or you add a new template in, you can get to generate thumbnails from there as well. So this is quite cool. So for example, if we come into our home page, you can double click to come in here. That then takes us into the editor like we saw with the master file. And this now means we're editing this particular template, which is, in this example, is our home page. So let's take a quick look at some of the options we've got here for actually creating and editing and working with content. So if we choose, for example, this image, you can see we've got a structure down the left-hand side showing us all the things that are going on. We can compact this if we want to make our life a little easier, and you can undock this if you want to as well. You also notice we get this little sort of pop-out menu at the top, this little sort of pop-out section there, toolbar. We can drag this around, and whatever we've got selected, we can choose to edit it. And it'll tell us what it is, and you can see we can click to open more options up inside here. And this is where we can kind of access things like utility classes, and so on. So row gaps, for example, utility classes, those kinds of cool things. So, for example, let's choose our image, choose the image option, come into circle, for example. You can see we can convert to a circle, or come into utility classes, say border radius, and we'll say something like large, and now we start to get curved corners on our images. Same thing with our buttons. If we come into our button, for example, we can select our button, come over to our button, come down and choose the utility classes and say border radius and apply a border radius. Want to make it a pill shape? No problem at all. Now, obviously, we're working on an instance basis there, and you can apply this by using classes. And as you can see, we've got a full class setup over here. So having this button selected, if we come over the button, which is the kind of parent, you can see if we hover over, it shows us all the different settings that are being set up for this particular button. So our justify content, our color, accent, our mobile normal, base focus, etc., etc. Now, I'll go into classes in a lot more detail if you want me to in a different video. I just want to say that this is fully compliant with classes and variables and so on. And there's also, if you pull in one of these sort of starter sites as opposed to working with the complete blank, you have a lot of variables and classes and everything set up for you, so you can take advantage of that. Obviously, if you want to start completely from scratch, you can do that by simply using one of the blank templates. So, that being said, we are looking good here. So, speaking of variables and things, let's come down to something we've got variables. Let's take this class off here. So we'll come into our button, and we've got utility classes and border radius. We'll set that to none. And what we can do is we can come down and let's say we want to grab the radius here. So you can see we can choose the radius. It's currently set to none. Let's delete that. So you see if we select where it says pixel, we can choose between all the different values, percentages, pixels, ems, all those kinds of good things. But you also notice we get this little diamond above, which is where we can access our variables. If we choose this, you can see we're dealing with a border radius. So it kind of knows, well, we've got some variables for border radius. You're probably going to want them. Now we can choose from here if we want to, and as you can see, we can edit this. And if we hover over, it tells us exactly what the value is associated with it. So if we select it, we've now applied a variable to that instance of this particular button. Now, obviously, you don't have to do it this way. You can do it on a class level. You can do it as an individual like this, or you can do it like this and you can apply it to a class. Typical thing you'd expect to see by working with classes and variables in any kind of tool. So if you're moving over from something like Bricks to try this out, it's going to work in a very similar fashion. There's some nice features up here, though, about how this all works. And you've got the hierarchy. So you've got the border radius and you've got your sort of secondary. So if you click on this, you can see we've got actions, utility classes. So if we apply a utility class, you'll see it tags it on the end. So we get that CSS hierarchy going on here. And we visually get to see it here as well. So that's pretty cool. And if you want to, you can easily sort of duplicate this, rename it, copy your styles, paste your styles. So you can use those as a starting point, copy them, delete them, whatever you kind of want to do, and then adjust and amend as needed. So there's a lot of options here for working with CSS classes and variables, which is what I like to see. If we come over and we want to add something in, so for example, we want to add a new section, you can see we open this up, we've got sections, container, div, grid, rows, columns, all the things you'd expect to see here to be able to create your sites and your pages. You'll also notice we've got library and component. Now, I'm not going to touch upon components today in this because I think that is something you'd want its own video on. And I would highly recommend you take a look at the Mosaic official YouTube channel, which I'll link down below. There's a ton of really good videos on there that'll cover a lot of what I'm talking about here in a lot more detail. So if this has whet your appetite, go and check out those videos. But let's just say we want to add a library item in. Well, we can click inside here and you see there's all our wireframes. As you can see, there's quite a lot of them here. And we got options on the left-hand side to filter these out. So you want media, for example, you can see there's our media options. You want hero. Again, there's all our hero options. So we've got a really solid set of starting wireframes we can call upon should we want to use them. And if you come into components, you can see inside here, this is where all your components will be stored. Obviously, we don't have anything right now, but you can create and store and save your components here as well. So there's a lot of options here now to get you to hit the ground running, where if you want to just sort of test this to find out how you want it to work, or you like working with wireframes, you kind of have a really sort of solid starting point here to hit the ground running straight away. Now, let's talk about dynamic data, because this is slightly different to what you would expect. So let's come out of this template. Let's go back in the normal templates and let's go into, for example, our blog archive. Let's open this up. So this is now our single post template. So if we look on the left-hand side, all the normal things you expect to see there. But you'll notice we've got this loop element and all it says is loop. So we don't see any of these posts or any information. The same thing goes if we hover over. You see it says loop. What we can do is we can double click on here, or we can edit this inside the actual navigator on the left hand side. And you'll see what this does is this now opens up the loop. So consider the loop to be like a little bit of a template inside. And inside there, you've got the sort of master design layout for the first card inside that design. So in this example, you've got your image, you've then got your author, the date, the title, the excerpt, and the category. And then you'll notice each other one takes on exactly the same structure. So this is basically the same as what you'd expect to see inside Gutenberg, inside Bricks, and so on. When you create a loop inside any of those tools, the first inside that loop is the template and everything else takes that on board. This is exactly the same. Let's just say we want to make some changes to this content inside here. Let's take this excerpt, for example. You'll notice when we hover over and select it, we now get this little dynamic data icon. If we click to open this up, so currently this is showing the excerpt. You can see there's our text underneath. Now, let's say you don't use excerpts or you want to pull the content or some other data in. Well, let's do that. Let's choose content from the list. And you can see that's done a couple of things. It's now pulled the content in, but it's also pulled in your divs, your div classes, your paragraphs, all those kinds of things. We don't want that information here. So we can use these effects to change that. Let's select this, show a dynamic code, come over to the effects, and the first thing we're going to do is get rid of that HTML. So we just left with the text. So let's scroll down, and you see remove HTML. Choose that. You see that now gets rid of the HTML. So that's cleaned that up. All that's gone. So now what you can do is you can also select all of that and come over and apply another one. So they stack on top of each other. And this time we're going to say we want to use excerpt. And we can say how many characters we want. So currently it says 25 characters, and that's what you can see underneath. But let's set that to 250, for example. We now have 250 characters with the HTML stripped out by simply using these effects. We don't need to do any of this manually. We can literally just use these little codes, and it's all done for us. Now insert our data. You can see there's our data inserted, and that will repeat throughout our entire setup. You also notice that we can do the same thing with images. So we select our image, come to the dynamic option. Inside there, you can see we get less options because it's context aware. And we can search, and we can search for the data type we want and sources and so on. There's lots of options here for what we can do. So again, if you'd like me to cover Mosaic in more detail, especially the dynamic information and stuff like that, let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, so we'll say we're happy with everything that's set up there. So we've got a bit of a customization going on, but at the moment, the only thing that's actually clickable is this heading here. Now that, to me, is not necessarily the right way of going about it. So let's say I want to set this image up to be clickable, so it'll go to the actual content. Well, if you click on this and you choose to open the dynamic data, there's no option inside you to set this up as a link. And if you look down the right-hand side, there's no option to set up as a link. If you come into the settings, there's no option to set as a link. So how do you do it? Well, this is one of those fundamental differences. This is something that tripped me up today, and I reached out to Daniel, the developer behind this, and he came back and explained how this all works. And it makes a lot of sense. So what you would normally do is you would select the element that you want. You then go into the dynamic data and you say you want to send that over to the permalink or the URL for that particular post, and dynamically it would change. Well, this works slightly differently. Let's say we want to make the image clickable. Well, what we need to do is come up to where the image is, come into plus, and we're going to come into the option that says link. And now anything that sits inside that link where it says inherited text will become clickable. So let's put our image inside there, and let's click on the inherited text and get rid of it. So now our image can become a clickable link. So we click on link, come up, click on the link there. You can see we can now choose where we want to link that to, or we can click on the dynamic data and say send this to the permalink. Insert dynamic data. That now is a clickable link. So anything you want to sort of place inside you, so if you put the entire card inside this link, the entire card will become a clickable element. So it's quite a different way of working to what we're used to, but it does actually make a lot of sense. You can put basically anything inside that link wrapper, and that will become eligible to become a link, whether that's a dynamic link or a static link, whatever you kind of want to set it up as. So there's a lot of options here for dynamic data, for CSS classes and so on. Some great wireframes, starter templates, and a nice onboarding sequence. Now, before I wrap this up, let's take a look at some of the other options here. I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail because I think when you kind of select something like this and you take a look at the options on the right-hand side, it's all pretty self-explanatory. We've got a CSS grid, we've got Flexbox, we've got all those layout options that we're used to. So everything you need to do layouts and everything is inside here. We don't need to worry too much about that. Come to our elements, you can see we've got items, pagination, next buttons, and so on. So inside our loop, we can set more options up in there. Our structure, our basics, our builder options are all here. So accordion, sliders, tabs, and so on. You can drop code in. You can use WordPress post content. So you could pull in the post content when you're creating templates, exactly the same as what you do inside Bricks, where you want to pull in WordPress content. So you can use that Gutenberg to actually edit the post content, and then it'll be output via one of your templates inside the actual builder. Exactly the same applies here. So all the options on the right-hand side, all kinds of things you used to see in. You do also have the interactions. Now, interactions are basically how you can build out animations. And this is where things are a little different to what we see inside interactions, things in tools like Bricks and so on. If you add an interaction, and we're going to say on scroll into view, for example, we'll select that, and you see we get a little timeline down underneath. So you can say add an action. So what you can say is you basically want to say, let's set opacity, and you can say what's your duration, a delay, any easing. The initial would be set to 0. Your 2 would be 100. And you can see this is where your timeline is. So you can stagger this, you can move this around. So you can create multiple images inside here, and you can stagger them and offset them and all those kinds of good things. And you'll see as we go through this, that will then fade in. And as it comes into kind of view, it'll fade in. So you kind of get the idea how that would work. So it's pretty cool how the interactions work. We've got a lot of into view, out of view, interactions, actions, tweens, and so on. There's a bunch of different options here for animations. So if you want to use animation, you've got a nice way of working. Having this timeline makes it visually easy. You can see duplicate actions and so on. So you can select this, duplicate your action. You know, you get the idea how this would all work. So that kind of is my first look at Mosaic. If you want to try this for yourself, you can grab the personal or the creator for the first 12 months for absolutely zero cost whatsoever, or jump on the lifetime deal if you want to grab that right now. All applicable links for this are in the description down below, but I would love to get your feedback. What are your first thoughts on Mosaic? Have you tried it? Has this whet your appetite to give it a try? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.